Just when you think they're out, they pull you right back in. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Bucks Latest, presented by the good people over at FanArch. As always, I'm your host, Dean Simon, and before we get into everything, please make sure to leave a like, leave a comment down below, and subscribe. We are still on the road to 2,000 subs, so if that's a journey you feel compelled to join, please consider pressing that big red subscribe button, and also turn on post notifications so you don't miss out on future Milwaukee Bucks updates. I don't know if you could tell if I'm in a good mood or not, but I feel like maybe you could. Maybe it's like radiating through the screen. I don't know, but the Milwaukee Bucks pick up their best win of the season, and throughout the rest of the season, I don't think any other win will eventually compare to it, unless they make it to the playoffs and there's some kind of crazy upset going on. But Pfizer form was rocking after the Bucks went down 18 in the first, not even just the first quarter, in the first 8 minutes or so of the game, and then they came back and made it a 9 point game or so at the end of the first quarter. Something that was just absolutely unbelievable through this one is, someone that we'll get into later is Jericho Sims, his amazing night and how he propelled the Bucks to victory. But alongside Bobby Portis, who all 13 of his points came in the second half, was just striping threes. AJ Green, I was really, really impressed by AJ Green's playmaking in this one and just ability to put the ball on the floor. I meant to say in the past episode before this game where I was saying that maybe you could watch Jalen Duren go for 50 and 30, which did not come to fruition. I hope nobody put down anything regarding that on the betting slip. But AJ Green, I meant to say in the last episode, if you go back to his high school highlights, that guy is a phenomenal ball handler and dribbler and can score easily one-on-one. But of course, at the NBA level, he is specifically honed in on his three-point shooting, and of course, it's paid off. I think he might be leading the league now in three-point percentage. He was at an even 50% going into this game, and I think he shot a cool 50% throughout this one as well. 5 of 11, so 45.5%. But still, a sensational night, 19 points, 2 rebounds, and even though he didn't end up with any assists, it felt like his passing was just crisp and that he knew where guys were going to be before they were. Also, something that kind of impressed me a little bit was Miles Turner in this one, even though when you look at the box score, it doesn't look like he had that much of an impact, but so many energy plays. He hit a big three to give the Bucks back the lead after, fighting and clawing back from 18 down. Of course, the arguably the best dunk that we'll see this year over Isaiah Stewart before he got ejected. And it felt like not even just for Miles Turner, but for the rest of this roster, the energy was just different. There was an extra lift in their step, like they woke up on the right side of the bed in the morning, and maybe it was the Giannis injury that instilled that within them, but that spread to Miles Turner, and maybe also it's because Miles Turner lost the undershirt, like that compression shirt underneath. He just went with the jersey. Maybe that kind of brought him back to his younger days as a Pacer, where before he rocked that nightly. But anyways, Ryan Rollins was sensational in this one, 22 points, 8 assists. He just looked completely comfortable out there, and he was attacking this Detroit Pistons defense that looked pretty weak throughout the end of the first half and, in plenty of the second half. Specifically, their transition defense was incredibly weak. Whether it was Miles Turner, and he was able to put the ball on the floor and get to the rim pretty easily, and Rollins and KPJ, just absolutely phenomenal throughout, like, for those guys in terms of a initiation aspect. But Miles Turner was absolutely phenomenal, even though he does have the minus 13 in the plus minus department. Something that I do think is crazy though is KPJ's 26 points, 7 assists, 2 boards. Though it came with 7 turnovers, he completely it doesn't even matter. It registers as a +8 in the box minus. So that plus minus has never really been a end all be all stat, but I think it does give a pretty good indication of who impacted the game when they were in. And Bobby Portis impacted it the most, according to plus minus, a team high +18 for Bobby, who was 5 of 13 in 30 minutes of play. But one thing that I'll really say probably impressed me the most outside of Miles Turner, who just still refuses to put a body on anybody and rebound at all. He finished with 3 rebounds in this one. Was the gang rebounding, especially in the second half, where their energy just turned up to a million. Of course, Jericho Sims and Bobby Portis, they led the team with 14 and 9 boards, respectively. And in the first half, it was just them two. And if you took out their rebounding, the rest of the Bucks managed, I think, 10 total rebounds throughout like 3 quarters. And in the fourth quarter, the gang rebounding aspect completely went into full swing with Kyle Kuzma and Rollins and KPJ and AJ Green all battling inside and all boxing out. I was just really impressed by Bobby Portis's boxing out on Jalen Duren, who, by the way, both Miles, Bobby, Jericho Sims, they completely took Jalen Duren out of this game. He had like 8 points, 6 boards, something like that. Um, yeah, 8.6 boards and 6 fouls. He did foul out in the final minute or two, but just an unbelievably hype win. There were just so many energetic and just the plays that made the crowd go wild throughout the entirety of the fourth quarter, whether it was the back-to-back AJ Green threes to was it to take the lead both times? I forget. But AJ Green hitting those back-to-back threes and he was fired up. And AJ Green was also part of, I think, probably the best sequence of the game where he's getting back in transition on defense against Tobias Harris and he goes up perfectly vertical against Tobias Harris, forces the miss. Then the Bucks come down with the rebound, gets thrown ahead to Bobby Portis, who throws the lob to Kyle Kuzma. The place went nuts, and that was to extend the Bucks lead. But we'll move on because there's a lot to talk about. Of course, with all the recent updates concerning Giannis Antetokounmpo and his future as a Milwaukee Buck, things began to get more serious today with Giannis and his representation getting into contact with the Bucks front office and really discussing seriously his future. But the amount of times that Giannis has kind of pump faked these kinds of I'm going to request a trade, I'm not situations, it's getting pretty sickening at this point. The fact that, and the thing is that every time he does it, I'm hanging on every word that he says or kind of every update that comes out because you never really know in this league when someone can get traded in the middle of the night that was, obviously the main example is Luka Doncic, but, there have been countless other guys in the league where you would have never thought the team would actually do it, but then they do. And it feels like any day now it could just happen. But speaking or not speaking of that, Giannis went down with a looked pretty scary at first, non-contact injury. He was kind of feeling around the Achilles area at first, and then of course, Bucks fans around the world's heart just collectively stopped. But after the game, or not after the game, after he went back to the locker room and was walking back there gingerly on his own power, though, it was a left calf strain for Giannis Antetokounmpo, and something that I had posted about. I forget if it was on TikTok or Twitter or whatever, but basically I called out the fact that Luka Doncic in December of 2024 suffered a calf strain, and then a month or two later he was traded to the Lakers, and then Giannis suffers a calf strain in December, and who knows? But anyways, Giannis might be out for, the general recovery time. I feel like for this kind of thing is maybe around 3, 4 weeks, about a month, I would say. That was around the same time that Luka Doncic was out with his last year. Um, so this kind of felt like, if anything, like the last hurrah of sorts, like kind of the last super insane feel good moment where you take down the best team in the East at, basically full strength. And you didn't have Giannis for essentially the entire game, or you didn't have him for any kind of advantageous position that you were in the game. He went out when they were already down by 10 to 15 points. So there's just really not much else to say about Giannis from a trade perspective, but that things are really starting to ramp up a little bit, and maybe this was kind of the last hurrah before things start to take more of a downhill turn. But hopefully not. The Bucks proved me wrong and made me eat my words from the past episode against the Pistons, and hopefully they can continue this stretch. But Jericho Sims, the MVP of this game, he scored 13 of his career high 15 points in this game in the first 3 quarters, I want to say, or the first half. And then in the fourth quarter, he comes in and has the incredibly important and one after was it the Kyle Kuzma miss? No, no, no. That was the top of the backboard one earlier on in the fourth quarter. But Jericho Sims gets an offensive board, puts it back up and in, plus a foul that took Jalen Duren out of the game. And then he completely splashed the go-ahead free throw that would give the Bucks the lead with maybe a little over a minute left. And then that was a lead that the Bucks would never relinquish, and they ended up coming away with the win. But Jericho's boxing out. He was constantly in the right place at the right time because off of screens, the Pistons defenders were just selling out to whether it was KPJ or even Miles Turner threw him a lob at some point in the first half. So there were plenty of moments where Jericho Sims just looked like it looked like he's done a full 180 from the preseason and the first game of the year where I felt like he just kind of looked out of place, like he didn't really know what spot he needed to be in on the court, but he understands that dunker spot perfectly now, and it showed with a career night. 15 points, 14 boards. That guy was just absolutely everywhere. And like I said before, his rebounding in tandem with Bobby Portis, I feel like that's what swung the game and what gave the Bucks an actual opportunity in this one. Because you don't often see a game where the Bucks, even though again they did lose the rebounding battle, they brought down 40 boards, and the Pistons had 44, so it wasn't as big of a disparity. And another way that the Bucks were able to make me eat my words, actually in multiple ways, when I was saying before that let's see how the Bucks can lose this game while shooting 50+% from 3, they won a game against the best team in the Eastern Conference shooting 29.5% from 3. And I was mentioning that the Bucks are, or at least entering this game, were the worst free throw shooting team in the league. They knocked down 20 of their 21 free throws in this one. And granted, that could be a factor of just Giannis not being on the court, because we know that he's guaranteed anywhere between 8 and 15 free throw attempts a game, and he might knock down half of them and kind of tank the percentage of the team. But regardless, sensational free throw shooting from the guys. And wow, like there's just way too many insane highlight plays that you can point to that that completely swung this game. But Jericho Sims was a part of plenty of them, and he deserves all of the recognition in the world for his efforts. And I didn't even mention that he was 7 for 7 from the field. Of course, he's operating really around the rim and just catching lobs, but still, Jericho Sims, MVP of this game in the Bucks' best win of the year, hands down. And coming up next, it might not be the same, but if this trend continues, the Bucks will have a chance for redemption against another team after the Pistons beat them earlier this year. Now they'll have a chance to down the 76ers coming up soon. And the last time these two teams faced off, Tyrese Maxey, kind of not kind of an MVP candidate. He's up there in at least like the top 5 or 6, you would think. Tyrese Maxey dropped a career high 54 points, and there was just no way to stop him. And I think I've said it on different platforms, and maybe I'm crazy. Maybe I'll lose some people with this, but I feel like Tyrese Maxey has the potential to be a Steph Curry-esque scorer. I don't mean he's going to do it in exactly the same fashion as Steph, or that he is Steph, or he's going to be Steph. Don't mean that at all. But with the production that he's offered for the 76ers so far throughout this season, where he's been shooting the lights out from 3, and a lot of it is movement shooting. He's been more of an off-ball player. He's taken about 10 threes a game and knocking down 40+% of them. And that kind of efficiency for that kind of volume has only been seen really by one other guy in the league for at least, a continued stretch. And that is the guy over there in Golden State. Um, so man, I don't really know how this next one is going to pan out, but now that the Bucks are preparing to have Giannis either, for a while or for the rest of time, uh, things are looking as unpredictable as ever, but a win like this at least gives you a semblance of confidence in this roster. And this was the first game of the year, really, or maybe the second or third, I just can't remember off the top of my head, that the depth of this team really shined through and took over when it mattered. Again, with guys like Bobby Portis, Jericho Sims, AJ Green, Miles Turner having great impactful games aside from KPJ and Ryan Rollins. Gary Trent Jr. still continued to be kind of missing from the offensive end, only knocked down 1 of his 4 threes, but was a pretty solid team defender, did what he needed to do. And again, also was a part of some pretty big momentum swinging highlight plays. But anyways, hopefully the Bucks can knock down the 76ers and take their second win in a row against another incredible Eastern Conference team. But that'll be it for me today. Thank you very much for tuning into another episode of Bucks Latest presented by Fan Arch. As always, I'm your host, Dean Simon. Before you go, leave that like, leave that comment, and subscribe. Also, turn on post notifications, and I will see you guys in the next one. Go Bucks.